But for now, let's get smarter with our lead-off panel. And before they join us, MS Now contributor Inzamam Rashid joins us live from just outside the Strait of Hormuz. You are on the ground. Tell us the truth. What is going on? The U.S. and Iran are trading strikes. There have been reports of explosions near a U.S. base in Iraq. Tell us what you're seeing.
Yes, Steph, as you mentioned, just after the 13th night of U.S. strikes on Iran, we've probably seen one of the heaviest nights of Iranian retaliation. They've targeted a number of U.S. military bases across the Middle East, including the Isa Air Base in Bahrain, the Mawafaq Air Base in Jordan. The Iranian military also claimed that they targeted a number of sites in Kuwait, where they destroyed an ammunition stockpile. They also said that 6 barracks on one of the sites were destroyed as well. And over in northern Iraq, where there is a huge U.S. military presence, drones exploded near to some of those military bases, and that disrupted flights at the Erbil International Airport. Today as well, the IRGC reiterating to anyone who lives near U.S. military bases in the Middle East to get away and to seek shelter at least 500 meters away, because they will continue to carry out attacks. But Steph, this is all happening because of the waterway behind me. The Strait of Hormuz very much still at the center of this whole conflict. Just in the distance, you may be able to see, I can see around a dozen or so ships that are currently stationary, not being able to pass through the waterway. And that's because Iran still has effective control over the Strait of Hormuz. They will target any vessels that do not go through that waterway under their regulations. On Wednesday, the Iranian parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Ghalibaf, had said that the situation in the Strait will not return to pre-war conditions. And we're seeing the effects as a result of that. You mentioned yesterday the price of oil going up to $100 per barrel. Also, the Strait of Hormuz, we're seeing the number of ships passing through at the lowest level yesterday in the first time in 2 months. So by controlling this waterway, but also the Red Sea, where the Houthis have been targeting vessels in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, Iran is effectively trying to control the world's economy by trying to control these energy chokeholds in this region. And that is obviously having a huge concern, as it has been doing over the last 5 months. They know that this is also President Trump's vulnerability. Finally, one point I will mention, Steph. Yesterday, President Trump said this specifically on Social Truth. He said that any further attacks by Iranian vessels to these waterways will be paid by Iran using their frozen funds. The Iranian foreign minister came out pretty quickly and said that those who celebrate or profit from such funds should remember, once governments normalize confiscation, no one's assets are safe, ensuring chaos will not be pretty or peaceful. I think what this shows us is that whilst President Trump is mulling over the major attacks, as he's put it, on Iran, is that we are only heading in one direction: further escalation, further aggression, and clearly a huge impact on the global economy. Steph.
And Zamam, I would say he may post it on Truth Social, but it is far, far, far from the actual truth. Inzamam, thank you for joining us. Please stay safe where you are. And let's bring in our leadoff panel this morning. Jake Sherman is back, MS Now political contributor and co-founder of Punchbowl News. Mark Leibovich, staff writer for The Atlantic. And Damian Paletta, Wall Street Journal's Washington coverage chief and author of its political newsletter. Damian, the New York Times is reporting that it's Iran who rejected a new ceasefire proposal from Trump that was delivered by Iraq's prime minister. Yet Trump is saying Iran desperately wants a deal. Sounds like somebody's not telling the truth.
Exactly right. I mean, Iran has a tremendous amount of leverage right now because they've withstood months and months of these attacks from the White House. You know, there was the ceasefire, then the MOU. They continue to stand their ground in part because they do have control over the Strait of Hormuz, and they know that. It was a horrific weekend last weekend where 4 American troops were killed, 3 in Jordan and 1 in Iraq. That really, I think, shook the White House because they felt like they had military control over Iran, and that's clearly not the case. So the Pentagon also revealed in the past few days that there were close to 100 American troops who were injured or wounded in the past 2 weeks. I think the cost of this and the toll of this war, just in July, quite frankly, is starting to set in for the White House and the Pentagon and the American people, and that is making the White House reconsider their approach. The president keeps threatening more and more attacks. That does not seem to put Iran on their heels. In fact, they're digging in even more every day.
I don't know. The reality might be setting in, but their interest in telling the American people the actual truth isn't. I want to talk about this death toll story, okay? We are talking about 4 Americans, 4 young Americans between the ages of 19 and 30 who laid down their lives for this country in a war. Mark, what is this reported decision to not include these 4 people in the death toll? What does it say about this White House and how they want this war to be viewed, and the respect or lack thereof they're showing for these 4 true patriots?
Yeah, I mean, it's preposterous on its face. I mean, if it's true, and I don't think we have any reason to doubt that it's true that they're trying to manipulate the numbers at this point, it signals, one, obviously callousness, obviously great disrespect to the troops who lost their lives. But also, if you sort of look at the statistics coming out of this, obviously this is more than just statistics. The White House is clearly terrified of death numbers at this point. I mean, to this point, mostly the data points have been around the price of oil, the price of gas, things like that, economic indicators, which are obviously troubling politically for the White House, but also something that people are sort of used to kind of figuring into this equation. When you start getting body counts out of this, that is a whole new level of political pain for the White House and obviously psychic pain for the country as they're processing the day-to-day of this, which obviously isn't getting into a good direction at all.
Jake, yesterday the House passed a new war powers resolution, but the Senate immediately blocked it. What's going on here?
Well, these are mostly, Steph, political votes, meaning that they're not going to have actual impact. But what it does do is it shows that there are a growing number of Republicans, only 4 in the House as of yesterday, who are, I would say, getting frustrated and fed up and sick and tired of the war. The reality will be they're going to spend, right now, there's the budget that they passed includes $60 billion for additional money for the Pentagon. And that's a lot of money. And I talked to Brian Fitzpatrick, a moderate Republican from Pennsylvania, who said, I don't support this war, but I support the troops. And I think that's the tact a lot of people are going to be taking. But that will run out at some point. And listen, they're heading into the midterms. As Mark and Damien know, and they were all covering this then too. I mean, this war is unpopular just as previous wars were unpopular. There's a lot of, although this is not nearly as involved as Iraq was in 2006, this has echoes of going into a midterm with an unpopular war. And that's a really difficult thing for Republicans. I mean, the numbers, Steph, on this war, the polling on this war is absolutely brutal. And I think it's only compounded on Capitol Hill by the fact that this administration is not really sharing end goals. Where are we going? What's next? What is the objective? What are we trying to do? And in what time frame should we expect these goals to be achieved? So they're not building coalitions on Capitol Hill. The politics are getting worse. And that's really difficult. It's 100 days Sunday, Steph, until the midterm elections. It's not that far away.
But Jake, can I just press pause and rewind for a second? Because the first thing you said was these were political votes that are not going to have an impact. That sentence right there that you accurately say all the time, isn't that exactly why the American people are so frustrated with government? Isn't that why they have such a low opinion of Congress? Okay, as you just said, the poll numbers are abominably low when it comes to how the American people feel about this war. And Congress votes no, but it's a political vote. None of it will actually do anything.
But that's our system of government, right? Even if the House and Senate both pass this resolution, Trump would veto it, and it would not have a veto-proof majority in Congress to actually limit Trump's ability to conduct or prosecute the war in the Middle East. Now, there's a larger question here, which is a much more esoteric question in a way, which is, should the president have the authority or claim that they have the authority to conduct what's now a multi-month bombing campaign against the country in the midst without any congressional approval and doing it kind of on his own with his administration without buy-in from Congress? And the answer to that, according to a lot of people, is no. We are at war. We don't have boots on the ground, but it's difficult to make the argument that this isn't some sort of large-scale conflict, which may, according to a lot of people's opinion, really should have the buy-in, the official, the formal buy-in of the Congress.